Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Final Hour. Okay, we got a great show for you this week. I am so excited because I have a guest. It's hard to really give his background. David Tall is with us now. David is a former major with the IDF. He's a current tour guide over in Israel. He just has all kinds of expertise and knowledge, and we're going to spend some time talking today about the news and the happenings and what's going on in Israel. So, David, thank you so much for being with me on the Final Hour today.
Well, first of all, it's amazing to be here. Thank you for this opportunity, especially on this critical moment. I don't know if people realize we're literally right smack in the middle of, I think, a pivotal moment in the whole war in Gaza that actually started on October 7th. And I'm just waiting for word any moment to see if they've signed it and if it's going to go. So, yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
Right. Well, let's do that. Just so the audience understands this, again, David being an expert with Israel, he's from Israel, again, a former major in the IDF. I have topic after topic after topic. We're going to kind of shot our way through this, and we'll get as much done as we can. Having his expertise, I really want to land on some things. I mean, Spain just reopened its embassy in Damascus after 13 years. So Syria, what's happening over there? We might get there. Egypt now is violating the promise or the commitment they made in the Camp David Accords because they're putting military vehicles and tanks in the Sinai. So maybe we can get to that. I want to talk about really the hostage deal and what's happening there and the key to the 42 days and what that looks like. And just thankfully, airlines are now saying they're going back to Tel Aviv starting February 1st.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, so I can tell everybody this, we're filming this 4 days before President Trump takes office. So anything we say today, this will air after it's going to air next week. So he will be hopefully the president of the United States by the time this airs. Just so you know, the people watching this, we're recording this 4 days before that event takes place. I want to talk about Turkey and the Ottoman Empire and what's happening there if we have time.
Sultan Erdogan. Sultan Erdogan.
There you go. There's a lot going on. And of course, and you have a ministry which is very near and dear to my heart too, called Gihon Springs. So we will end with that so people know how to get involved with that. So let's take it, I guess, in order of importance. I don't know if we're going to talk about the hostage deal first or what's going to happen with Trump coming in. Which one would you like to start with, David?
Well, I'm going to say, and again, I've got a YouTube channel called the Balagan Connection. Check it out. But Balagan means mix up, mess up, and I connect different Balagans. And let's connect both of these two elements, the Trump effect and the Trump inauguration and the hostage situation. I don't know if you remember, I think it was when Ronald Reagan became president. Okay, President Carter and him were actually, arguing.
1979. Okay, yeah.
Exactly. And the Iranians had taken 52 American hostages and were holding them for a year. And the day Ronald Reagan stepped into office on January 20, the hostages were released.
Yes.
And here's what I'm trying to say. I have a feeling we're going to see something similar happening here with President Trump.
Hang on. That was done because they were so upset with Carter and they held on to that. And just to kind of throw that in Carter's face, they released them when Reagan became president. So do you think the same thing is going to happen when Trump comes in because of what's happening with Biden? But is it because they're afraid of Trump? Because Trump said, when I take office, everything's going to break loose if you don't do this. So do you think it's because of Trump or why is the comparison?
Well, I think I don't remember who I heard actually say the Trump effect is like a pebble that's dropped into a lake. Okay, where the pebble hits, there's big waves, but the rest of the waves radiate out to the outside.
Right.
Meaning, in the hostage negotiation over the last year and a half, there have been different players. Egypt has been a player, and maybe we can connect that to Egypt. Qatar has been a player. The Hamas has been a player. Iran has been a player. And what's happened is the Trump effect, is the main difference between an agreement that was very similar to what we see right now. We can go into the details. That was actually almost reached in May last year, but fell apart at the last moment. Now, because of Trump, the Trump effect, he's putting pressure on Qatar, who are part of the negotiation. He's putting pressure on Egypt. He is actually told the Hamas, if you don't reach this agreement, I'm going to let Bibi and Israel go, and they'll do whatever they want, and I won't hold anything back. So that is the Trump effect that I think has been put in. I don't think they're trying to give him a present, I think, like the Iranians were doing, but that might also be an action.
Okay. And the current administration with Biden, and even going back to Obama, they really almost supported Iran and some of the things they were doing. Is that not correct?
That is totally correct. The Biden administration, the Obama basically administration, believe that appeasement of the Muslim world will lead to peace and stability. And I don't know if you remember, President Obama received the Nobel Peace Prize for going to Egypt, the first foreign country that he went to, and apologizing to the Muslims for everything that we are as a Christian Western democracy. Right. And that appeasement, everybody thought would be a deterrent or would be an aspect or would be an element in Middle East politics. And it turns out that it was a weakness that only gave them more power and more courage to stand up and be what they were. I mean, Iran would not have happened. The Iran proxy power would not have happened if President Trump had been in office.
Right. Well, I'm excited to see what happens when Trump does take office once again, for Iran, for the hostages being released. I mean, that's obviously wonderful news. But I do have some concerns about the Abraham Accords. I want to hear your thoughts on this. I'm thankful he put Huckabee in there as the liaison to Israel. Huckabee, I spoke with him at a conference last year. He's a man of faith. I understand he understands the prophetic part of trying to give any land up. That's not something we are to do with
I do have a point of view on that one. I know Mike Huckabee personally, have known him for many years.
Okay.
Among other things, I'm a tour guide. I've been doing his tours for the last 8 years. So we've sat on the bus many times. Okay. Mike Huckabee is a born-again Christian.
Yep.
And he is totally versed in what's going on in the Middle East. Yep. And he is totally dedicated to supporting Israel and Israel's biblical role in the world. Right. So the fact that President Trump put Governor Mike Huckabee in that role means that President Trump realizes that Israel has a role to play that is above and beyond its little Middle East point of view. And I think, again, I can only thank God that President Trump is in office. For a while, we were kind of worried about that. But Mike Huckabee is one of those, tools that President Trump is going to use. He's not the only one. I don't know. David Friedman is really in there. And what's happened, I think, already, and you can see the Trump effect already, is that all of a sudden, Lebanon is willing to reach some kind of an agreement with us. And even the new Syrian regime, led by El Julani, is already making very careful that it doesn't want to step on American toes. So we've got a new sheriff in the Middle East, and I think Israel's going to be the deputy sheriff. I think, can we call it that way? And I think this is going to be a major change. So the Abrahamic Accords are in the interest of Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, and others, because there's a rise in the Muslim Brotherhood, which is fundamentalist, jihadi, wacko Muslims that both Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and ISIS are actually factions of. The Muslim Brotherhood has taken and risen its head under the auspices of Sultan Erdogan, I'm going to call him, or President Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, who is looking to return to the former days of glory of the Ottoman Empire.
Right. I want to hit upon that too, but wait a minute, before we move on. So Trump's, I don't know, intrigue with the Abraham Accords, which was his deal, last time. Do you think he's going to push that again, or is he letting go of that more? What do you think happens with that?
No, I definitely think he's going to push this. I mean, on On a legacy point of view, Trump wants to make a major change, a major shift in the Middle East. He actually, I mean, I heard him say it once. He's actually dreaming about a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean,
Okay.
if Obama got it for doing nothing, he believes that he should get it. And his legacy. This is his legacy now. So I think he's pushing it. He believes that he can create the mega deal that'll bring all of this together. And
But go ahead. Or
this
do
is
you
the
think
first.
do you think he's going to ask Israel to give up land, or to, it's just, I mean, what happened? I can't see Governor Huckabee being behind that.
Well, I don't think he's going to ask Israel to give up land, but
Okay.
he's going to ask Israel to make concessions, for instance, to allow more of a Palestinian autonomy, maybe not a country, in the West Bank in return for Saudi Arabia saying, we don't fight you anymore. Okay, or we're not against you anymore, or we will back you, or whatever. Saudi Arabia, for instance, right now is funding the rebuilding of Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
again, what President Trump does and the Abraham Accords does, he makes a Balagan connection. He ties all the different aspects of Saudi Arabia and their problem with their economy right now, with Lebanon, with their fear of Syria, with Egypt, by the way. And I don't know, we've kind of mentioned that, but Egypt has been moving forces into the Sinai Peninsula.
Yep.
In disregard to the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt from 1979, when Anwar Sadat came back.
Yeah.
Now,
Camp David Accord.
why is Israel allowing this? Because and by the way, Egypt has been rearming itself in major ways, rebuilding their navy. They're buying up tanks like crazy from the United States.
Yep.
What is Egypt doing? Egypt's got threats both on the side of Libya, and think about this: Egypt's economy is crashing because of the Houthis.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Houthis have closed off the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, they're losing billions of dollars a day, literally billions of dollars a day. So Egypt is going to have to deal militarily with a couple of things. I think what Trump is saying is this. He says, I don't want to deal with the Middle East. You guys figure it out. On one side are the people that I like, Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. On the other side are the people that I don't like, Syria, this. I will support the people I like, and you guys deal with it, which has been Trump's policy. So the people that Trump likes are going to get together and say, okay, let's be friends.
Okay.
And I think that's the dynamic of Trump more than anything.
So do you see Trump being okay? Because again, Egypt is breaking their commitment and their promise from the Camp David Accords by putting military vehicles and tanks, a ton of tanks, in the Negev, in the Sinai Desert. Do you think Trump's going to be okay with that?
I think he's going to be okay with it. Israel's not going to be okay with that, but he's going to put pressure on Israel to be okay with that. Now, from my point of view, I was a little baby sergeant doing my tank training way back when we still had the Sinai and we were still giving the Sinai Peninsula back to the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
So some of my tank training has been done in Egypt, in the Sinai, before we gave it back to the Egyptians. And the idea was we will never have a war against the Egyptians, though when I was in basic training, I was trained to deal with a war against Egypt. Egypt was one of the, the enemy nations. Egypt has not been an enemy nation for quite a few years now. I think Israel is starting to realize that the Middle East has changed. And again, the 7th of October effect on Israel is a lot of things that we took for granted, we are not going to take for granted anymore.
Right.
Egypt, I think, is one of them.
David, I so much appreciate your insight and your knowledge and your experience in all this. Thank you for sharing all that. Now, you brought up Turkey, which is very interesting because of the leader there and what he wants to do. And just for the audience to kind of get a little background here, the leader of the Turkey right now wants to bring back the Ottoman Empire. And remember, the Ottoman Empire was becoming a world they were going to dominate the world back in the 1600s. If you go back to 1683, actually, September 12th, 1683, the Ottoman Empire lost the War of Vienna. And when they lost that stopped the Ottoman Empire from becoming world leaders and conquering the world, which is why I think 9/11 happened in 2001. That was a very important date to the Ottoman Empire and the Muslims, to recapture that and to regain what the Ottoman Empire was trying to do. But now, fast forwarding from 2001 to now, you have the leader of Turkey that really wants to expand its borders into Syria and head down to Alapa and so on and so forth. So could you give us some background on Turkey, its leader, and what you see happening there?
Well, let's take it let's kind of we'll do this quickly. Turkey sits in the eastern Mediterranean, actually between Syria and Greece on one side, and between the Mediterranean Sea and Russia on the other side. Very pivotal point. Okay. And in the past, they were an empire that spanned most of the Middle East, all the way over to India on this side, and like we said, Vienna on the other side. But after World War I, that they lost so bad to the Allies in World War I, they disintegrated the empire and remained with little baby Turkey. Erdogan sees himself as a new sultan, and he is seeking to be the leader of the Muslim world. So he wants to project Turkey's influence to further than he has. He's already projecting his influence into Libya. I don't know if you know, but there's actually Turkish bases in Libya. He's projected his influence, or Turkey has projected influence into Cyprus, which sits in the middle. Half of Cyprus is actually Turkish. There's Turkish bases, by the way, in Sudan. I don't know if a lot of people know that. So what he's saying is, I want to be the great Turkish empire that I was in the past, but there's something very complicated in the economic parts, because first of all, Russia did not allow him to grow too much in the Eastern Mediterranean for all the Russians' reasons. Russia is now on its hind foot in Ukraine. So Russia is out of this. So Turkey is kind of raising its head. I want to add on one aspect that a lot of people don't understand. If you've been in Israel lately, you stand in Caesarea on the theater, you see oil platforms in the background, or gas platforms.
That's correct. Yeah.
Israel has enough gas to supply Europe with natural gas for the last 20 years. Now, the problem is, it's in Israeli, economic waters. There's natural gas in the Cyprus economic waters. There's a little bit of natural gas in the Lebanese natural waters. And the problem is, there's more than we can use, which means if we connect a pipeline from Israel to Cyprus to Greece to Europe, we can sell that to the Europeans.
Correct.
Turkey has no natural gas. And that pipeline is literally going to go down the bottom of the sea underneath their literal feet. And they're saying, wait a minute, how is this happening? And we're not a part of this party, which is why Turkey is ramping up its naval power right now. And I see us getting into some kind of connection. And I'm going to add on one more thing, since we are talking prophecy here. And that is the fact that who supplies natural gas to Europe right now?
Russia.
The Russians.
Yeah.
Which means if we turn on the pipeline from us to Europe, we're directly competing with Russia.
Correct.
We're taking away money, we're taking away their resources, and it makes sense for Russia and Turkey to get together in order to solve that problem in the Eastern Middle East. And here I've gone into biblical prophecy without even knowing it.
Right, and that's what's so amazing what's happening now. I remember when Russia went after that little country called Georgia.
Yeah.
And the reason he went after Georgia was for the pipeline for the oil. And then you have, again, we can go all different directions with this, but up in Haifa, you've got the oil out in the ocean there. And they're saying, okay, does it belong to Lebanon? Does it belong to Israel? And there's a battle going with that too. So it's amazing how God is bringing the oil and the energy to Israel. Again, it's all biblical prophecy from Isaiah 35
and
on
I
as far as what's happening.
I think Turkey, for instance, is a combination of the economics, the geopolitical, and even the spiritual battle of Islam against the West.
Right.
And the weird thing is that Israel's stuck in the middle of all of this.
Yeah.
Tiny little Israel.
Aren't they always in the middle? Either you having the fingers pointed at them, or they're in the middle.
I mean, do you remember? I don't know if you remember the Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh yeah.
One of the famous signs from Tuvia was, God, I know we're the chosen people, but couldn't you have chosen somebody else?
Exactly. Actually saw that in Broadway in New York one time, my family.
There you go.
All right. Okay, you brought it up, so I'm going to go that direction. We won't go very deep on this, but Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus and such, you're bringing up what's happening with Turkey and wanting to take some of Syria, Damascus. Spain just reopened its embassy in Damascus. They've been gone for 13 years, and Spain said, okay, they're going to reopen this. Do you see Damascus, what happened in Syria so quickly, threw us all for a loop, but do you see Damascus actually blooming, or do you see Isaiah 17 around the corner?
Well, I see Isaiah 17 as an end time event, and there's a lot of things that are going to connect to that. But I'm going to make a Balagan connection for you here because just like you talked about Ottoman spreading all the way to Vienna, and that was the high point of the Ottoman Empire.
Sure.
The high point of the Arab Muslim Empire, okay, was in Spain. They had conquered all the way over to Spain. And I don't know if you remember, the Battle of Tours was the high point of Spain, where the Christians started pushing the Spanish, the Arabs back, and actually that was a high point. So what I find fascinating is that the first European nation that reopened its embassy in Damascus, which was the center of the Arab world at the time, is Spain, remembering its golden era. I mean, you can't make things like this up, like our good friend Tom likes to say.
There you go.
And that also always finds me fascinating. So the Arab world is trying to push itself back out in this direction. Why is that important? Because with the fall of Iran and Iran's influence in the Middle East and the proxies in the Middle East, in the power vacuum, the Arab fundamentalist Shia, Sunni wackos have taken up shop. And I think that El Julani, remember the new leader of Damascus, used to be an Al-Qaeda operative and an ISIS operative. So that's where he comes from ideology-wise. And he is now in control of Damascus. And that is going now. Again, so far we've got some quiet. So far he's put on a tie and shaved it. No, he hasn't shaved, but trimmed his beard. But basically he's trying to say to the Western world, let's this, but we're talking about ISIS ideology. We're talking about Taliban ideology. And I think we're going to be seeing ourselves slowly setting up for a major clash. If he does manage to pull the Abrahamic Accords together, there is going to be a fault line or a borderline or a clash line on the border between Israel and Syria.
So, okay, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. So would Netanyahu look at that and say, okay, here's a red line to cross with that?
Well, Netanyahu has looked at that. And by the way, I do want to put a side note. People keep on talking about Netanyahu like he is the only element. Israel sees what's going on, and I'm not talking only about Netanyahu. The Israeli establishment, I mean, the soldiers, the officers that I've been talking about, okay? Because Israel's had relatively quiet from Syria for the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. And now we're potentially thinking about a aggressive anti-Israel stance from Syria like we've had in the past. So Israel has already taken out as much of the military assets and much of the military capability of this new regime as we can. We've sunk ships, we've blown up depots and other things. And we've blown up most of their air force. I'm not sure they could fly it, but basically, yes. And Israel's very, very wary about what's going on. And Israel, as a result of, or as a lesson of, October 7th, will not allow, if possible, Syria to become another version of Hamas on the other side of a border.
Okay.
So I can see us going into main confliction with Syria in the near future.
Okay. Wow. Amazing. Well, let's, if you don't mind, let's get to kind of the heart of the issue, what people are talking about now, and that's the hostages being released. That's the deal being done. Explain the Philadelphia quarter, what this means, the 42 days, the structure of that. Could you help walk us through that and explain it from a layman's perspective?
7th of October, 250 Israelis were pulled into the dungeons in Gaza. A terrible massacre, a terrible terrorist attack, and Israel has been dealing with that. There have been a couple of hostage releases along the way. To make the long story short, at the situation we're at right now, there's 99 hostages still in Gaza. Hamas has been devastated, but not taken out completely. And the feeling is that unless we reach some kind of an agreement, this isn't going to end. The world's been putting pressure on Israel. And President Trump says, I need to finish the hostage situation, but he also wants a ceasefire in Gaza. There's been a negotiation that's been going on and off for the last year and a half. And anyway, the final agreement that was actually reached as a result of the Trump effect, meaning President Trump putting pressure on Israel and the different players around the whole listen, meaning the Qataris, meaning the Egyptians. Okay, an agreement has been reached where I think probably next Sunday, we're probably talking about the day of the inauguration, or very close to it, will be the beginning of a process that will see the release of 33 hostages over 6 weeks.
Mm.
3 on one day, 5 on another day 5, another day 5. And while that is happening, Israel will move out of areas inside Gaza, including the Netzarim corridor, which is between the northern part of Gaza and the southern part of Gaza, and the Philadelphia corridor, which is a line or the border. People forget that there's a border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt that was used by the Hamas to arm itself. All the weapons came in through there and everything came in through there, through tunnels underneath that border. Israel sat on that border and says, we need to control that border. It looks like Israel has agreed to move out of the Philadelphia corridor in return for those hostages. A lot of us are very upset with this. On the other hand, we're saying at least we're going to get, according to this agreement, at least 33 of the hostages back. And on the 50th day, there will start to be a negotiation for the other 63 hostages and a final solution to whatever is going to happen in Gaza.
And day 42 is a transition as well, correct? I mean,
Exactly.
phase 1 will go 42 days, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
So again, we will be returning or giving back to the Palestinians something like 2,000 Palestinian prisoners in return for this.
Okay.
And it's again, it's a thorn in Israel's side. It's something that we're doing very, very hard. Israeli society is torn by this. They're torn between, yes, give us the hostages back, but no, we are actually allowing Hamas to live to fight another day, and that's a serious problem.
You said there's 99 hostages still there.
What
Is
we
there
know
is there
is
proof of life? Are they alive?
no, and I'm sorry to say there's 99 names that we know, but we don't know how many are unalive and how many are alive.
So after 42 days, when there's 33 more to be released, you don't know if they're going to be people or bodies.
No.
That's hard to negotiate.
No, it's tearing our soul apart. I
guess.
mean, think about the families where we see the names and they don't know if the what's going to be returned or coffins or people, and then think about the families whose people are not on the list. And they don't know what's going to happen because they're another stage. Hamas has been playing with these hostages, and again, I can't help. I don't know if people remember from the 80s the whole American hostage situation with Iran. It is considered normal practice to do this. The United States of America has never done hostage taking, or most Western countries have not done hostage taking and playing with the lives of hostages. Arab and Muslims have done that on a regular basis, and this is another case, and we're on the blunt end of this.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, and that's how it was done in warfare for centuries.
There's quite a few prayers in Israeli society, and the Bible talks about redeeming hostages, and again in a couple of places.
Right. Well, it's amazing what's the day that we're living in and what's all happening here with the hostages and what's coming up there. It was a video that was sent to me. I realize it's just a small video. It's a small perspective, but the citizens of Gaza are still looking forward to bringing damage and pain to Israelis. Would you still say that's fair?
Yes. And one of the things that 7th of October has done and subsequently ever since is ripping off the mask of the Arabs just want peace and prosperity for them and their children also. That's not true. Hamas has said very clearly they don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution with Israel gone. I mean, the destruction of Israel, and they are willing to sacrifice their future, their economy, and even the lives of their children. And they have said this. So Hamas is saying this is one battle. We've maybe not won, but we have not completely lost. And we're just going to do this again. And I think this time we take them seriously.
Right.
So,
Well, the world is so against Israel and taking land and building things and what they do. The land belongs to Israel, but I've been over there many times. You know, I'm not from there like you are, but I know that you make a choice. You either carry Israeli ID or Palestinian ID, and the ones with Palestinians ID, they say they are treated better and get more benefits living in Israel than any other Arab nation they would choose to go to. So the people who are Palestinian and they live there, they're happy with it. It's
oh,
amazing how the world comes against Israel for
we
that.
call them Israeli Arabs.
Right,
Okay, and a lot of people don't realize that 20% of the population of the state of Israel,
right,
meaning 1 out of every 5 Israelis that carries an Israeli passport, is an Arab Muslim.
right,
Our parliament, our Knesset, okay, a house of parliament has a mosque in it. It's got a little synagogue, but it also has a little mosque in it. People don't really realize, and the Arab Israelis are the most free and the most prosperous Muslims in the Middle East. They
amen,
live
right,
better than Muslims anywhere else in the world because, like the Bible says, if you curse us, we will curse you. But if you bless us, you will be blessed.
right.
And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really realize.
Genesis 12:3 is still alive and well, isn't it?
Totally. The Bible is alive and kicking, which, by the way, I can't help but add on one little cravat on this one. The churches are not stressing enough what's going on in Israel right now. You've got Bible stories being played out on CNN and Fox News. And this is a classic time for anybody who teaches the Bible and talks about God's promises. Look at what's going on. And I'm not hearing enough noise about Israel from the churches and from the pulpits. I'm
Right.
sorry to say.
And being a pastor, I apologize for that for my brothers and my peers, but you are correct with that, in that it's heartbreaking with that. You see God moving, especially in the Muslim world, how more and more Muslims are becoming, lovers of Jesus and following
Exactly.
Jesus. But the Holy Land, Israel itself, always been about 1 to 2% Christians, not really been holy as far as that. Is there a movement happening over in Israel? Are there becoming more Christians in the Holy Land, or is that percentage still about the same?
Okay, so again, maybe my unique position allows me to kind of go into that a little bit deeper.
Sure.
I grew up as a Christian in Israel. I
Okay.
mean, I'm Jewish. My dad was saved, by the way, while he was in the Navy here in San Diego and moved to Israel with the family. And we were part of the Messianic movement in Israel. Now, when I say
Okay.
Messianic movement, what we're talking about is that Jews who believe that you don't lose your Jewishness when you become a follower of Jesus, which makes a lot of sense to everybody else. But I was surprised how much it didn't make sense for a long time to a lot of Christianity. But what I'm trying to say is this: Judaism, Israel is going through a revival right now as a result of what's going on. The revival is mostly Jewish, meaning more people are becoming more religious. There's a Jewish religious revival going on in Israel. But I was there with a group a year ago almost, and they met a group of Israelis on a trip on one of the hills overlooking the valley of Elah, of David and
David Goliath.
Goliath.
Yeah.
And when people ask me, "What are you doing here?" and I said, "We're here because we're a Christian church touring Israel." And they said, "Why are Christians touring Israel?" And I explained to them that, there are Christians who love Israel, and they couldn't understand it. And I find myself, and remember, I got beat up for being a Christian in school in Israel. Okay. But I
Mm.
find myself on this hill overlooking, the site of the battle between David and Goliath, explaining to about 30 young Jews who Jesus was, what does he mean to Israel, and why do real Christians really love the Jews because they're Christian. And then we're amazed. What I'm trying to say
Mm.
is this: Israel is open now for listening to, hearing, and relating to the name Jesus in a way they have never been before.
Mm.
And if anybody listening to this has friends, family who are Jewish or Israeli, reach out now. Because what will open the hearts of Israelis more than anything is Christian love.
Mm.
And
Amen.
this is the time to show Israel, which is still bleeding, by the way. We're still bleeding. And we will be in PTSD as a country for the next generation or two, to show Israel Jesus and Christian love right now. And I think that's really, really critical, which is probably connected to what we're doing now also, among other
Mhm.
things.
Amen. Thank you for that insight. Thank you for that. It's being in Israel and talking. I talked to a lot of people who live there when we're there, obviously, and they either call themselves religious or secular. That's kind of
Yep.
the terms they would use. I'm not religious. I'm secular. But even those who are secular, they still do Shabbat. They still do the dinners. They still celebrate the religious festivals, Passover and such. So there is a spirit of worshiping God throughout Israel, no matter where they land with
Well,
that.
even secular Israel is much more religious than secular America.
Correct. Correct.
And we don't have an anti-religious aspect. I mean, we celebrate Hanukkah, and we don't have a problem with secular Jews saying, "I won't say Happy Hanukkah." I mean, yes, you can. This is our culture. I studied passages from the Old Testament, learned them by heart in secular Hebrew school.
Mm.
So this is our culture. We go to the synagogue. Well, I know it sounds bad to say it like that. We laugh about it. We go to the synagogue to get married and to get buried. Okay, even if you are a secular Jew. I mean, and so what I'm trying to say is yes, but I think even now more and more Jews understand that we thought we had the great army, we thought we had the great military intelligence, we thought we had the great Mossad, and we thought that we were on the top of the world and it was all about us. And we got smacked really, really hard on October 7th.
Mm.
And I think more and more Jews are realizing, more and more Israelis are realizing it's not all about what we have. We need something more. And there is a Jewish revival, but from what I'm hearing and talking to the people on the ground in Israel, there's also a Christian revival going on. I mean, more people
That's the
are
news
open.
that gets me excited to see that. I
Yeah.
was also thrilled to see that they're allowing Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount.
Well,
Where they're able to, they fall prostrate, they're worshiping, they're playing the show. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing in the Temple Mount now.
well, I'm going to share something that's maybe a little bit more complex.
Okay.
Last week, we lost 5 soldiers in Gaza because of an explosion of a building. I'm not going to go through all the details, but it turns out that one of the soldiers that was lost in Gaza is a young born-again Christian from a Christian family. And it was the second of the believers. We call ourselves believers because we don't want to disassociate from all of Christianity that doesn't have a very good rep among our people. But Aviel was a Christian, and he was mentioned on the news like all of our soldiers. And like all the soldiers who fall in battle, they brought pieces or little recordings of the funeral, and they showed his mother talking about him, who are both born again Christians. I know them; they're from a congregation in Korea. But let's see if I can say this without choking up. While he was reading a passage dedicated to his son, Aviel's father read from the New Testament, and I'm listening to Israeli Channel 2, and to hear the words of Paul spoken in Hebrew on Channel 2, open to the public. I just have goosebumps saying it. Now, the situation is harsh. I mean, we lost a young man from our world. But the openness of Channel 2 to be willing to read the New Testament live in Hebrew on the air and say it's the New Testament, that is what we're talking about. That's the difference that we're talking about.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's a great time to kind of transition to, because I could go on for hours with you. I enjoy my time whenever I get to be with you, and I want to be respectful of your time and the listeners watching us too. But I do not, and I will not end this until we talk about your ministry and what's happening. So this story of this funeral and this soldier will be a great transition into that. And before I want to get to Gihon Springs,
Okay.
before I do that, I want everybody to know Bagligan Connection. Did I say
Balagan.
it correct? What is it?
Balagan.
It's Balagan.
Balagan.
Balagan. If you want to Google that and find that, I really encourage you to look at that and follow David
Check it
Tao
out.
with this. And then, David, you have a ministry called Gihon Springs. Will you
Well,
give us some background with that and tell us how we get involved with that if we can?
again, if there's anything that I find amazing about this is how God kind of connects the Balagan. I'm one of the Balagan that God connected. So I've been a tour guide for many years, and Jeff and Karen Johnson from Calvary Chapel Downey have been coming on the tour for many years, and I've known them for many years. I am the PK, pastor's kid, that walked away. And for many years, became a secular Messianic Jew. Oh, wow. That's a mouthful. But to make the long story short, I was here in California visiting Jeff and Karen when God spoke to me. Literally, I had my road to Damascus moment on the beach in Seal Beach, which is, I find amazing that people go to the Holy Land to have their moment. My moment happened here. And as a result of that, I came back to put my faith in Jesus. And Jeff and Karen's daughter was part of this process. So we're now family. I married the daughter. And Jeff, who has a love for Israel and always had a love for Israel, put together a ministry called the Spring of Gihon, Gihon Springs. Now, if you know, the Spring of Gihon is the fresh water that bubbles out underneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem that filled up the pool of Siloam, which is where the blind man was healed. Mm-hmm. And we actually created this ministry to support Christian organizations in Israel. One of the Christian organizations was an organization that was discipling young Israeli Christians before they went into the army. So all of that was in place. All of that was working. And then the war happened. And all of a sudden, Gihon Springs, which was in place and ready and dedicated, we've got all the machinery up and running, turns its eyes on supporting the IDF. We buy drones. We buy special equipment. We support widows, by the way, of some of the soldiers. We support the young soldiers ministries in Israel. And all of a sudden, so Gihon Springs now is water bubbling out, well, from the United States right now with resources. So if you want to be a part of that, you want to be a part of Jeff and Karen's dream, Balagan Connection, GihonSprings.com, GIHON Springs.com is the way to be a part of this amazing work.
And we will make sure that's on the bottom third. So people watching this podcast will have that connection to you and connection to Israel via
just to add on one thing, Pastor Jeff passed away almost a year ago now. So I always find it fascinating how God prepares all of these things. God's machinery is always fascinating, and that's just another one of them. So may his memory be blessed.
Amen. Amen. Well, before we say shalom here, is there any last words that you have that you would like to leave us with, my brother?
Well, right now, from the deepness of my heart, I'm following the Israeli news. Pray for the families. Whatever's going to happen. I mean, they've gone through a terrible ordeal for 480 days, and now this ordeal, they don't know if their loved one is going to come back in a box or in an ambulance, and no matter what, it's hard. Pray for the families of those who are not in this hostage release. Pray for Israel. And again, I'm not a great lover of Bibi, but right now he's at the top of the pyramid. Pray for wisdom and his making the right decisions. There's a lot of politics mixed in, but there's also a lot of emotion. And this is God's will. Pray that we as a people align to God's will in the correct way.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And let me challenge everybody who's watching this podcast. If you go to a church, I hope you're in a church. If not, please get into a good Bible-believing church. But encourage your pastors to understand what's happening in Israel, to understand the scripture behind Israel. The land belongs to God. 170 verses in scripture say God gave the land to Israel. There really is no Palestinian. We won't go into that, but the background there, what that is. There's a myth. There's huge misconceptions about who Israel is, what's happening over there, and we need to. Psalm 122 verse 6 says, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem." And that's not a suggestion; that's a commandment. And there's also a promise there. Those who do will have peace and security in their own homes, which is all we want. But by praying for the peace of Jerusalem, we really won't see that happening until our Lord Jesus Christ does return. So we're really praying for the return of Christ when we do so. But anyhow, with that being said, again, let me thank everybody for watching this podcast, the final hour. I'm glad to have you with us. David, thank you so much for your expertise, your insight, and your time today. I appreciate it. So God bless. Shalom. We'll see you next time. Thank you, guys.
Next year in Jerusalem.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us today on the Final Hour podcast. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share this podcast with your family and friends as you help them see that we are living in the final hour. If you want more of Pastor Dave's teaching, you can join our community called Prophecy Seekers, or you can reach us at interpretingthetimes.com. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time on the Final Hour Podcast.